With it being 6:30 on Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019, I will call this meeting of the Webster School Committee to order and ask that we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for everyone joining us this evening. It's always great, Mrs. Gogan, to have another full house at tonight's school committee meeting. First item on the agenda is the approval of our January 8th, 2019 minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Laurie, would you pull the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Good evening, Mrs. Gogan. We're good. Excuse me one moment. I'm getting the signal that you might not be turned on.
I am now. Good evening, everyone. I am delighted tonight to have a full house. I want to start the meeting tonight by recognizing our soccer team and Coach Renault. And at the January 5th Central Mass Soccer Coaches Association, this team was recognized at the banquet with the Sportsmanship Award. Only one team in Central Mass gets the award. I'd like to ask Mr. Athletic Director, Mr. Paranto, to give us history and speak about this great accomplishment.
Mr. Paranto, can you do me a huge favor? There's a portable mic down at the end. I get yelled at when people don't use the mic.
My voice is pretty loud. I'm sure it can carry through all Webster anyway. But anyway.
Yeah, you think you have to turn it on, Mr. Paranto.
Okay. There we go. Now it's in.
There we go.
All right. Quick summary of the season for our boys varsity soccer team, football, basketball. Boys varsity soccer team. They had an overall record of 12-9. They had a record of 3-6 halfway through the season, and they persevered through that, winning some big games to go into the postseason. They had 2 upset wins in the districts on the road and reached the district semifinals for the second consecutive season. They had numerous individual awards that were awarded to them throughout at the end of the season by the TNG as well as their Central Mass and State Association. But obviously, I think their captains did a tremendous job this year. Their captains were Sean Kunkel, Justice Afori, Joey Anderson, and Taven Fonavong. And Coach Renault did a great job having his kids obviously do a tremendous job with their sportsmanship, and that's what we're here for this year, for this evening, for 2018 Central Massachusetts Soccer Officials Association Sportsmanship Award, which demonstrated their continuous fair play, respect for opponents and officials and fans throughout the season. It's a tremendous accomplishment for these individuals, as well as Coach Renault. I would like to congratulate them through our Bartlett Athletic Department, as well as the school committee and Webster in general. Congratulations to you boys and Coach Renault.
Mr. Paranto, I think I'm on, yes. There were also 2 extra awards for Jacob and Taven.
Yes, those 2 individuals did get awards. Taven was awarded Taven and Jacob were awarded the Central Mass, but Taven also was awarded the State Association Award for his fine play throughout the season.
Congratulations to all of you. So what we'd like to do is get a group picture of you right in the middle of everybody, if we could.
Can we just pause for one moment?
Yep.
And just see if there's any comments
Yep.
from the members? On behalf of the entire school committee, let me just reiterate Mr. Paranto and Mrs. Gogan's congratulations. I've had the privilege of knowing Mr. Renault for a few years now, and I say this to him privately all the time, so I think it's fair to say this to him publicly. He is absolutely one of my favorite teachers, first and foremost, and one of my favorite coaches and role models for our young men that we have in the district. He is a phenomenal coach, not only in the X's and O's of soccer, but also in developing very wonderful, fine young men. And I've had the privilege of knowing some of you since U6 soccer, and although I didn't get to go to as many games this year as I had in the past, I did get information and updates on how you were doing. So again, on behalf of the entire committee, thank you for once again representing not only Bartlett High School, but the entire town on and off the field, and thank you very much. So now you can have your picture, because I'll get yelled at if we don't get the picture. That wasn't a soccer injury, was it?
Yes, it was.
Really? I think Taven should be in front.
So it's quite an honor for you to receive this. Only one boys' team and one girls' team gets recognized this way. Congratulations. Thank you so much for representing Webster. Nice job. Well done. I got you.
And I think because you guys had such a great season, Dr. Cushing told me before the meeting that you didn't have to do any of your homework tonight, so you're good to go tomorrow, right?
No, we had given him today off.
Ah, that's right, that's right.
Thank you, boys. Have a nice night. Thank you. I also would like to recognize another Bartlett High School student tonight. As I had previously told you, Brian James had been selected as the superintendent's scholar for the luncheon that was held at Holy Cross. Unfortunately, Brian, I was not able to make it because I was sick, but I wanted to let this committee see you and tell you in person how proud we are of you for all of your accomplishments. When you weren't here at the last meeting, I was able to read what you wrote for the Scholars Book. And I'm going to read it again because I think it's a pretty powerful statement. You wrote, "Hope has two beautiful daughters. Their names are Anger and Courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to see that things do not remain the same as they are." I think that's a pretty powerful quote, and I was wondering if you might want to come and talk a little bit to us tonight about how you picked that and what your plans are. I know I read all of your bio, but I think it would be nicer if it came from you. So can we pass a microphone to Brian?
One right over here, Mr. James.
So you just want me to.
You can sit down, you can relax. We just want to hear from you.
So the way I came across that quote was it's a quote by St. Augustine, and I've always admired St. Augustine because I've been looking at Assumption College, and the religious order there is the Augustinians, who take a lot of their practices from St. Augustine and they study his life. So I've been reading his. It's kind of a biography. He talks a lot about his life because he's confessing all the wrongs that he's done. So that was how I came across that quote and picked it. Am I talking about
No,
other stuff
I
that
think
I've
that's,
been-
I was curious how you found that. We're very proud of you. I told the committee at the last meeting a little bit about you, about your hopes and your dreams. I think it's personally amazing that you have had perfect attendance since you were a freshman.
Mhm.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is, we need more students like that. That's amazing. Been the captain of your tennis team since your sophomore year. You're a member of the art club. You have art in the art show tomorrow night at Anna Maria College. You are an all-around wonderful student, and I just want to compliment you for serving as a very positive role model. And we know that great things are going to come from you, and we wish you the very best in your future.
Thank you.
And again, let me just reiterate on behalf of the committee, congratulations on receiving this award. And I have been fortunate to say this the last couple meetings. Again, you represent what is the best in Bartlett. and we are very proud of you, and good luck with the rest of your school year, and whatever your future endeavors, if they're Assumption or another school, we wish you the best, so thank you.
Thank you.
You can't leave without a picture. Come on, Mr. Cushing. We're very proud of you. Awesome. Awesome job.
Thank you, Brian.
Dick
Thank you.
Tracy. Thank you, Brian, for coming. Keep up the good work. I'll talk to you soon. I think it's wonderful to bring the students to our meetings.
It's the best part of the meeting.
It is. It is. And I'm so proud of them, you know. I have some other information to share with you, and I will proceed through my report. I'd like to congratulate Tyler Adolfo, who won the Lions Club speech competition. He was here at one of our school committee meetings. He is now moving on to districts, and he will be competing on February 9th in Leominster. I would also like to let the school committee know that we have put together new hiring practices and procedures for the athletic positions in our district. It is our utmost hope to hire teachers within our district for coaching positions. And you have that in front of you. That is a procedure that has been discussed with both principals and the athletic director and shared with the union. I would like to let you know that our personnel update, we have hired Abina Kobe Ampen as an ABA para at Park Ave Elementary School. And in my other section, I would like to inform everyone that the Board of Health in Webster voted to adopt the flavored tobacco restriction, and then they rescinded it. They recently voted to hold a public hearing on flavored tobacco restriction regulation, and I'm waiting to hear about that date. And I do bring that up because I think we have a lot of students who are vaping and looking and using flavored tobacco, and I think that I would like to be at that hearing to share my opinion. I'm pleased to let you know that Tina Groskowski from Central Mass Tobacco Free Community Partnership, who has presented to us last year on vapes and tobacco issues, will be presenting at the Webster Middle School on February 5th. And I believe the high school is in the process of trying to get her to come to talk to the staff and train them as well at the high school. I'd like to let you know that Senator Sonia Chan Diaz distributed the Education Promise Act, and I think things are really moving in Massachusetts. This act provides rightful opportunities and for meaningful investments for successful and equitable education. And in the act, the bill would change the foundation formula and look at the actual cost of health insurance as opposed to the estimates. It would meet the estimated 16% of students requiring special education. They would increase the current rate to, from 3.75 to a rate of 4%. They would also increase the base rate funding for low-income and ELL students by 50 to 100%, depending on the wealth of the district. And they are looking to create an advisory committee made up of educational experts to help better inform legislators about policy decisions. And that's just what's in that act, a brief summary of what's in that act. Also like to let you know that we held an administrative assistant negotiations, and we will be meeting with them again on January 16th. We met with them on January 16th, and we have two upcoming dates, February 4th and 27th. I held our monthly district meeting, our district safety meeting. I'm pleased to let you know that we are working on a community-wide safety event with the date of May 18th from 11 o'clock to 2. That's a Saturday. Our vision is to hold a community-wide fair here with many different constituents And it's coming together, and it's going to be an interesting project, something new that we've not done. But we have everyone in the community behind us and working with us, and anyone who's watching who would like to contribute to educating our community about safety, please don't hesitate to give me a call. We have been working hard, my administrative team, on the FY20 budget, which we will discuss later in this meeting, and also the district comprehensive review. This is quite a process. We are collecting evidence of what we do. I'm actually very much looking forward to this audit because I believe an audit can really tell you where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. We may be using this format just as a healthy way to collect data even when we don't have an audit. So I think there's been some very good positives that are coming out of this process. I'd also like to let you know that we are starting the middle school track, boys and girls. We discussed it last year. It is not in the WEA contract. We have met with the union and we have agreed to do a trial year to see how many students come, and we have agreed upon the set rate of $18.53, which is less than some of the other stipends for 3 meets. And then if it is successful this year, we will look at writing an MOA with the union for next year. We had a very, very busy day today. I want to thank all of our administrators and in particular our curriculum directors. We had, and I will pass out to you, a professional development day where teachers were very busy working. Some teachers were working on SEI, learning more about SEI practices. Some teachers were in with the Looney Math. Our related service and counselors were all doing a risk assessment training, and even our administrative assistants were in a training to learn more about PowerSchool and how to keep our data accurate. Also pleased to say that the curriculum office held our first professional development committee today. I was very well attended. I was able to attend it myself. I'd like to thank Janice and Jill for organizing that. And I'd also like to give a shout out to the teachers who have signed up, volunteered for that committee. Andrea Amato, Kathleen Barris, Jill Chapdelaine, Monique Colson, Alicia C., Janice Daniels, Lauren Galati, and Pam Gonzalez, Russell Holden, Karen Miller, Megan Prince, and Michael Zajac. Did I forget anybody? It's an important committee. It's a nice way for us to get two-way communication with the teachers. I was very pleased today that we are on the same page. The needs that we are assessing as the managers and administrators are the same needs that the teachers and related service providers are looking to fill. I have been working diligently to expand our community partnerships. And tomorrow, I'm pleased that I will be going to Unum in Worcester and be meeting with Sheila Blythe and the Vice President, I'm sorry, his name is off of my head, Stephen James Joseph. And so that's exciting. I would also like to let you know that I will be attending the Massachusetts Superintendents Association midwinter meeting on Thursday. Commissioner Riley will be there. The focus is really about next generation learning and the challenges that we're faced as leaders. And then last but not least, and I wouldn't say this if it was on Mariah's report, but it's not. So I want to remind everyone that our art students have an exhibition. Boy, am I tired tonight. An exhibition at Anna Marie College. Tomorrow is the grand opening at 6 o'clock, and it will be there through February. And I did send a tweet out to remind people. So I hope that people can go and celebrate the beautiful art that our students are doing. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the committee? You were probably going to do this anyways. Could you just email us when you find out the date of that public hearing,
Yes.
please? The union, first of all, thank you for the athletic hiring procedure. I thought it was well done. The union did raise, I think, a valid concern with regards to stipend positions that are non-athletic and making sure that the process is followed per the contract as well as HR best practices. Is that being incorporated informally, or is that going to be a separate policy?
These are not policies, these are procedures.
Sorry,
So what- so-
procedures,
So
right.
we have a hiring procedure already established. The union has not, when I asked, given me any information on what that specific issue was. So
Right.
I don't know the
Okay.
specifics about that. So I'm waiting to hear from them. But
Okay.
yes, obviously, we want our teachers to be the people that are doing our co-curricular activities. They have relationships with our students, but we also want to make sure that we're hiring the highest qualified person. So there has to be a process of interviewing and looking at experience and following those protocols.
And this just popped into my head when you were talking about that new potential act that was
Yes.
submitted. We may, as part of our budget process, want to invite at some point Senator Fatman and Representative McKenna, once again, like we did last year. Obviously, if there's momentum going on, and especially in Beacon Hill, whether it's this act or the budget process in general, we just want to make sure that our local representatives understand where we're coming from. I think they do, but.
They do, and I am in contact especially with Representative McKenna.
Okay. And one last reminder for the members and anyone that might be watching, we do have another special town meeting Monday at 7 o'clock. There's probably other items on the agenda, but the main reason for the special town meeting is, I believe, adding a third part of the town where it will be legal to establish a marijuana retail establishment. Last I heard, they were proposing at the end of Lake Parkway and Thompson Road, where the buses park, I think. Which kind of, that's not our responsibility, but where would AA go with the buses? But that's. But anyways, there's a town meeting Monday night at 7 o'clock to
We'll
discuss
be there.
that. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, thank you very much. Unless Mrs. Perangeli or Mrs. Parmley object, I just want to skip over to Mariah's report and jump to student update, Mariah Belletti. Good evening, Mariah.
Good evening. For athletics, the boys indoor track beat Leicester, David Prouty, and Tantasqua. The girls track team has beat David Prouty, and the boys varsity basketball has had a great season so far. They started off 0-3, but now they're 9-4, and they have beat Southbridge, Oxford, Grafton, and Millbury. And the girls varsity basketball has beat Southbridge. For clubs, the DECA members competed at the district competition in Boxborough, and 6 of our students made it to states. So congratulations to Tyler, Noah, Allison, Ryan, Brandy, and Vangel. There's a blood drive on Friday, February 1st, and then the Black Empowerment Student Union Club is preparing dates for the Black History Month presentations that will be taking place in February. So all students that would like to go to those presentations will be able to attend. For fine arts, we have a lot. We have 4 students, Hannah, Corey, Ezekiel, and John, who all qualified for districts and performed at the Central Mass District Chorus choir at Mechanics Hall this past weekend, and 2 of the students received all-state recommendations, so that's great for them. Art classes have gone to the MIT Museum in Boston last week, and the jazz band this week on Saturday is going to Berkeley for the annual jazz band competition. We have 2 bands performing. We have the big band and then the select band. And then Show Choir has their first upcoming competition at Shepherd Hill on Saturday, February 2nd, and that completes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the committee? Good luck Saturday.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure you guys will do great,
I'm
hopefully.
excited. It's always fun going to Berkeley.
I plan on attending unless something bad happens, but it is fun to go, so good luck
I
on
was
Saturday.
happy there wasn't like any snow on the ground, and then it snowed, and now it's gonna be hard to walk.
Yeah, but
this'll be
it's
fun.
supposed to be 40 and 50 degrees, so it might
Yeah,
melt by
hopefully it'll
then.
melt a little bit.
You guys are young. It's harder for us old people to walk in ourselves. Well, good luck and thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Continuing with the superintendent's report, the business manager report. Good evening, Mrs. Perangeli.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Tonight on the agenda, I have a facility update. It's a 2-part. I'm going to talk about the buildings a little bit, and then I'm going to go over some staffing. This will fall in line with a budget request that is coming up in our FY20 budget. I thought it would be a good idea to give you some background on why we're bringing that position forward. First things, I'll speak about the buildings a little bit. Knock on wood, we're in pretty good shape. We started off the year with finding out another area of our boiler had broken at the high school, which is about $8,000 to repair. They've been dropping left and right. We've replaced about 7 of them, I think, in the past few years. So since that, things have kind of slowed down over here at the high school. We are maintaining maintenance-wise as far as building conditions are concerned. We haven't had any majors, which is a good thing. We've just had our fire inspections. I know, knock on wood, I don't want to jinx myself here. We've had our fire inspections. We have a couple, I believe, smoke detectors that need to be adjusted here in middle school, and then there was just a sensor at the elementary school that we needed to repair. So everything looks good there. As far as Park Ave goes, maintenance-wise, we are in really good shape. New building, I would hope that we would not have any maintenance issues. We have seen some issues with the sound in the room for educational. The teachers have the mics that they can wear with the overhead sound that projects out. It's kind of a technology, but I put that towards facility. It was part of the building project when we built. It's only 3 years old. You wouldn't think those systems would be breaking, but they are breaking fast and furiously. I think we have about 6 or 7 rooms now that don't have the overhead, and the parts you are no longer able to get the parts. It was a proprietary item, and the company is no longer making that, went south, so we are stuck. So I have another company coming in and looking. They are no longer under warranty to see what it would be to repair. Do I have to do a whole room, nuts to bolts, or is there areas that we can put in for the sound? So that's something I'm looking into there. It's a shame that you have a new building like that you have to start looking at that. But other than that, over at Park Ave, everything's going well with the building maintenance. The guys are working really hard at keeping that up. And then middle school has been a different story. The building was built in opened in 2005. So we are now 13, 14 years old. We are starting to see things deteriorate a little bit. Things are breaking. Looking at the building, they don't make things to last anymore. A lot of the items are, 10 to 15 years life expectancy, and you got to start replacing them. Things that we're seeing go are controllers and motors in the classroom that service the heat and the airflow in the classroom. We've lost a few motors and a few controllers. The controllers are about $1,500 per classroom to fix. So as those, I've got 2, and I believe we already had 1 replaced, and then we usually go to have been going through about 4 to 6 motors over the past couple of years. So we're anticipating that. We also have had some HVAC issues with our library. We were without heat for a little bit in our library. It was a multi-part issue. They went up to the rooftop. We had a bad motor. They replaced that, which was about $1,200. The heat was back up working. And then we had some bad switches and stuff. So it is another couple $1,000s to repair that we're taking care of. And then we also had a rooftop unit over the gymnasium with a bad module board. So that was about $1,500. And this is all in the month of December. So things are, breaking, and we're repairing them the best that we can over there. We have one item that we're kind of holding off on that I'm waiting to see how things go. We had a controller that went down for our main water pump. There's 2 controllers that run it, so we're working off of one right now, but that's about a $6,000 repair to do that over at the middle school. So it's not something that we have to do right away, but it's something I'm going to have to get fixed eventually. So we're just holding off on that. So that's been the building of need this past month and a half. So we're keeping a real close eye on our maintenance expenditures over there. And, it's another area we're going to have to keep in mind moving forward as the buildings start to see age, maybe in investing a little bit more in the maintenance of those if things are going to start failing. The second part of my presentation or report I just thought I was gonna I wasn't gonna put any visuals up, but I thought this was just a good thing to help read. There was a study done in 2016 for facility maintenance for all schools. And it talked about really how recommending plans for maintenance of the building, facilities, how to maintain the grounds, best practices for equipment, for cleaning of equipment, and best practice for staff. And they broke it down for staffing into 5 levels of cleaning, of how the cleanliness of the building, I want to say. And this is, depends on what kind of systems you have, but they found an overall average, a consensus of that. They rated it from level 1 to level 5. If you go through them real quick, I'm not going to read anything, but this is based on an 8-hour period of cleaning and depending on the level of cleanliness. So level 1 is what you might find in a hospital environment. We're not a hospital environment. But they say in an 8-hour period, one person can clean about 10,000 to 11,000 square feet if you want to clean like a hospital. And they did this purposely for schools. It wasn't done for hospitals or other areas, but they were just trying to show the level of cleanliness for schools. Level 2 is utmost standard for school cleaning. It's reserved for restrooms, special education areas, kindergarten areas, food service areas. They're saying one custodian can approximately clean 18,000 to 20,000 square feet in a 8-hour shift. Level 3 is where best practice. This is what most schools strive for. This is about 30,000 square feet per employee. This is acceptable. It's not, there's no health issues with this. It's recommended. Would we like it a little cleaner? Yeah, but realistically, this is where everybody's kind of falling. Level 4 cleaning is not acceptable in a school environment. Classrooms would not be cleaned every day. Carpets would not be vacuumed, maybe every other day, third day. Dusting occurs once a month. And at this level, a custodian can clean 45 to 50,000 square feet. And then level 5, nobody wants that. That's just unhealthy. So that's not where we want to be. So what I've done is I've taken our square footage of the building. These are not, the square footage is exact, but I mean, you've got to take into account some maintenance areas that you don't need to clean on small areas like that, but really the square footage doesn't add up to that much that you don't have to touch. If I take a look at Park Ave, that building square footage is 109,000, and we have 3.5 custodians there. 1.5, I say, is a day custodian, and 2 are at night. I count Sean as a 1.5 because he does cleaning in the morning. So normally your hours are at night. Your day guys typically don't clean. They're there to handle the spills, the sickness, deliveries, anything that needs to be repaired. Our guys handle grounds. This does not take into account any grounds. This is just cleaning of the building. So I said we use 1.5 day custodians, 2 night custodians, because I'm counting half of Sean's time as cleaning time, because he does that. So if you count 2 custodians, and I have 18 student, those are 18 student bathrooms that we have. We have 32 bathrooms at the elementary school. 18 of them are student bathrooms. That's approximately 54,000 square feet per custodian. So that puts us in level 4. That's not where we want to be. If we were to increase that to increase the half custodian that we're requesting, that would put them down to 43,000, which is still almost level 4, not quite in level 3. So we're still out of whack there. Same thing for the middle school. Building square footage is 108,000 approximately. We have 1.5 day custodians, 2 night custodians, because at the middle school we have 1 day, and then we have a split shift custodian who comes in halfway, so his half is cleaning at night. So we have 2 cleaning at night, so that's about 54,000 per custodian, and adding another half would put us at 43,544, which is still below the recommended 30,000 where we'd like to be. And then Bartlett, we have 4 custodians and a 0.6 grounds person here. So we have 1.5 day and 2.5 night, and that's about 74,000 per custodian. and they have somebody who maintains the grounds here at the high school. We don't have that at the elementary school, and we don't have that at the middle. They're required to take care of their own grounds. So although it appears the high school, by far, you would think, looking at this, the high school would actually need them more custodians. You got to take into account the age of the students that you're servicing. You know, this building used to have a lot, used to have 700 kids in this building. Now we're down to 450. We're at the elementary school, we're at, what, 815 maybe now? 815 with enrollment, and the need is a lot higher at the elementary school. The calls that you get during the day for a custodian are a lot higher. So that leads to our budget request. It's been, this is on a perfect day when everybody shows up. This doesn't take into account anytime somebody's sick or vacations or anywhere that people are out of the building. We had the flu go through our guys over break. So there were times where we had a half a guy cleaning, an elementary school of 108,000 square feet, and that's impossible. That's impossible to do. We just don't have the coverage, and so that's why we're asking for more staff. But I just wanted to give you a brief update of our facilities, where we're at. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. Please ask away, and if not, that concludes my report.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
One question.
Yep, yes.
With 1.5 custodians at each building during the day, are both of them are doing the day-to-day, just keeping up with the demands
So-
of the students?
Right, so the half, so what happens is your morning guy comes in at 6. He'll do a walkthrough of the building, make sure everything's all set, and he can start to do a little cleaning before the kids come in. Once the kids come in and they're in class, you can't clean in class. You're interrupting the students. The day guy comes in, the next guy, the split shift usually comes in about 11. So he helps with lunches, and then they clean cafeteria floors and start doing that. By the time that's done and they've gotten through the kitchen, it's the end of the day. And then the night guys are responsible for all the bathrooms, all the classrooms, to keep that up.
And during this time of year with snow and things like that, they're also, are they
Required
taking
to
the
do-
walks and all that kind of
Yes.
stuff, right?
Yes. So that's what your morning people will do at this time of year before people come in. They're out sanding, they're out cleaning up, they're out shoveling. If we need the support, they'll call guys in
From the
early, but then your night's not happening. Your night's
Right.
not getting clean.
I would just like to say that our custodians across the district do a great job. Whenever you walk into any of our buildings, they're clean, and they take pride in their work. And I want to thank them for what they do.
They do. They work really hard, and, this has been something that this has been a want for a long time, and it's something that always gets put on the back burner because, we're putting our educational needs first, but I also think that we've invested a lot as a community in our buildings, and we need to maintain our buildings. We've just made it to the list for the MSBA for the high school, and I think it's important to show them that we're investing in our buildings and we're maintaining in our buildings and we're staffing our buildings appropriately. Even with this new position, you can see they're understaffed. But I think it's important to maintain and support the buildings the best that we can. They work hard doing it, but, they're working hard just to try and keep it a little clean, it's not the way they want to keep the buildings. They're just keeping up, so. Concludes my report.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is Principal Report, Robin Harmley, Park Avenue Elementary School. It's a tough night to talk, Mrs. Gogan, for all of us. Good evening, Mrs. Parmley.
Thank you.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I know I have several things on the list, so I'm going to move through them very quickly. First of all, January 12th, we just had a wonderful PTO-sponsored event, me and someone's special dance. It was wonderfully attended. It was so much fun, and it was just really precious to see, especially the daddies dancing with their little girls. It was put on by not just PTO, but lots of Park Avenue staff were right there, and our SRO has the moves. Mr. Whiting did a great job connecting with the kids. On January 18th, we just had our first concert. Our second graders did a fabulous job under the direction of Mrs. Valerie House. We did a concert honoring Dr. Martin Luther King called Kids for Peace, and I felt like everybody left very, inspired. On January 21st, as you know, we just had our PD Day. And I won't go into that because I know we're going to talk more about it, but it was, I'm getting very positive reports back, and I think it was a very productive day. We are currently in the middle of assessments. We have just finished up our access testing for ELL students. We have just finished up our DIBELS for reading fluency. Last week, we finished up our iReady assessments for ELA, and this week and next week, we are tackling math iReady. So we're very excited to eventually share data with you, but at first peek, it's looking very positive. So that's very encouraging. And then just to let you know, our January character trait is resilience, which I think comes in perfectly with the assessments we've been doing. The ability to bounce back after a difficult situation with strong determination. And the last piece on this list is the consideration for a service/therapy dog for a visit to Park Avenue. Research shows that children really do connect very well with animals. Animals show unconditional, non-judgmental love for people. I've provided to you a folder with some leisurely reading material at your leisure that will kind of show you some of the support of what service dogs can do in the educational setting. And this is just something that we would like to try on a very, limited basis to start out, maybe once a month, just kind of see how it goes. We feel like, educationally, it will support our students who need some emotional support, but it will also support our students who might be struggling with their reading. There are so many places out there that are allowing service dogs in or therapy dogs in to provide that kind of support. So we would just like to respectfully propose that for you to consider.
Mrs. Parmley,
Yes,
can you just explain how you would use the service dog?
sure.
So with the reading in particular?
Yes, absolutely. So what happens is we would ask teachers, first of all, to make appointments. Students would only be out of their classroom for 10 minutes, and the children would be coming into my office with the dog. First of all, we would introduce the dog to the school body and let them know if he's walking and they see him with his vest on, he's working, so they can wave, thumbs up, but they can't touch. However, once he's in my office, the vest comes off. They're allowed to sit with him. We have a little area set up anyway for children to come and read, so it's kind of in a good spot for them. The students could come and just read to him and practice their reading and their fluency and their expression. They can sit with the dog can sit beside them. And for emotional support, it would be if kids are just need a little extra TLC.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I am in support of allowing Mrs. Parmley to bring a service dog in and try this. I think our policy says that we can use animals for educational purposes, but I had requested that we bring it forward to get some feedback from you guys before we proceeded.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
How would insurance work for this? Have you talked with whoever our insurance provider is?
I'm actually in conversation with somebody that would be bringing their dog in, and we are discussing that piece. Also, the permission slip that we had students fill out when the pony came was kind of all-encompassing. So we did list potential animals that could come in at some point whenever, with the superintendent's permission, of course. And so that is covered as far as students with allergies. We also have a list of which students obviously could not make contact with the dog, but those permission slips were kind of, they're covering all areas, so that if that is something, we would ask them in advance and make sure we would, confirm that again if this is something that they're comfortable with. But definitely we are looking into the insurance piece.
And this is a trained dog. This is a trained service dog.
Yeah, his name is Jacoby. He is a golden retriever. He has done this work before in a previous district that I worked at. So we've had very good experience with him and watching how children really benefited from spending time with him.
Any other
And to be
que-
honest, I have staff who would like to make appointments too.
I may come in.
You too? Okay, I'll sign you up.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think it's a great idea. I worry a little bit about the liability piece, but I'm confident that that will get sorted out. And when it comes to just being able to sit and read with an animal and not feel embarrassed if you don't get your words quite right or
Right.
something like that, or when you need a little snuggle, nice to be able to get that from a dog. So I think it's a good idea.
Absolutely.
By the way, in your introduction, were you claiming that humans don't provide unconditional love? Is that the?
It depends on the human.
That's
right?
true. We all strive to a better
That's what we
place, right?
strive for, right?
I think we were kind of joking about this before the meeting. I think we all saw on a national scale the infamous Sully service dog during President Bush's funeral services. And I think we're all reminded that, you know, oftentimes we think of service dogs and they're extremely valuable with people that have sometimes severe needs. But sometimes it's just, to your point, it's reducing stress. I know they're going into hospitals and healthcare facilities and obviously doing tremendous work with PTSD folks such as veterans and working with them. So I don't believe I hear any objections personally. I think it's a wonderful idea. I'm assuming, and maybe this, I'm not familiar with training of animals. Does a service dog require additional training to be around children as opposed to?
Well, service dogs are usually used in a different capacity as therapy dogs.
Okay.
So this particular dog would hold the certification to be able to do both.
Okay,
His owner currently is using him as a service dog personally because she's dealing with the oncoming condition of MS. And so this dog is providing, strength for her to lean on him. However, he also does the dual role of therapy with children. And I've seen him in action. He's very, very gentle, but definitely we would, of course, provide any kind of certification or temperament testing and the different training that he would have to have under his belt in order to be come into the school setting.
again, personally, I think it's a great idea and managed well, which I believe it would be beneficial.
I just want to point out that our policy does state that the district will not assume any responsibility, and the owner will be fully aware of this and most likely might have insurance themselves. So we will be looking much closer at the insurance, but I think for some of our children, this may be an opportunity that they don't get elsewhere. So I want to just compliment Mrs. Parmley for thinking out of the box in ways that we can help get our kids to learn to read in a different way and feel proud about what they're doing. So I will keep you apprised of what happens with the insurance. Okay?
Any other questions or comments? Was that your presentation?
That's it.
Any other questions or comments for Mrs. Parmley? Hearing none.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sorry.
Sorry, me again.
No,
I had the pleasure of being at the grade 2 concert, and, it's something really special to do a winter concert around something other than the holidays, and singing about Santa, which is very cute, but singing about peace and watching the children get so excited about acceptance and just togetherness and all of the other things that they sang about was really moving. So thank you.
No, thank you. I really do. I believe that kids really had a much deeper understanding of the holiday and why we celebrate Dr. King and his message of peace. They had to learn poetry, so they had to dive in to find out about his life, his accomplishments, and his mission. And so I felt like this was a kind of a deep dive into learning that as opposed to just having a day off. So
Exactly.
they really enjoyed it. I was definitely inspired, so thank you.
Thanks.
any other questions or comments? Hearing none, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, moving down to old business, everybody's favorite subject this time of year, FY20 budget update.
Okay, team, drum roll.
They all look ecstatic.
My favorite time.
We are definitely enjoying the budget process. Since our last meeting, our team has gone back to the table to really have some much deeper conversations about what we really need as opposed to what we want, how are our programs working, I will tell you that our principals and staff are taking a much closer look at their programs. We do not have that data tonight because they're taking a deep dive, which we will be bringing to you. And at our last budget meeting, we made some changes from the first budget that we presented to you. So tonight, we'd like to present you a budget that represents a 4.2% increase over this fiscal year. And we will go over a very brief PowerPoint and then answer any questions that you have. We start with our vision and mission because that's what grounds us. It's about the students, and I won't read that to you. But, I do want to point out that the budget process, we will be bringing the third draft of the budget on February 12th to the school committee, and then we will be looking for final budget recommendations from the committee on February 26th, and that's why that's highlighted in red. And then on this page, I wanted to highlight when we passed out the budget calendar for the year, we had tentatively put the date of April 9th in for our school budget workshop, and that would be a meeting before a school committee meeting, and we haven't really talked about that, so I highlighted that, and I don't know if that works for the committee. You don't have to answer me now, but to do a budget workshop before a school committee meeting might be an efficient way to do this. And we could actually start earlier than 4, but I'm not sure that you could. So those dates are there for you to think about. Our budget goals have not changed since our last meeting, but our presentation has. So our first draft was $21,009,071,314. Our second draft tonight is $21,850,404, representing a 4.2% increase. So what is included in this budget? We have done a lot of talking about our programming. We've been doing a very good job in the last year and a half at really looking at curriculum and cohesiveness and putting structures in place. And what's coming to the light for us is that we really need to look at our social emotional programming across the district and not just throw staff at it. That we really need to look at programming for that. What are we doing for the students that are getting suspended repeatedly? What are we doing for the students that have issues with aggression? We are recommending, and which we did at the last budget, an additional adjustment counselor at Park Avenue Elementary School. We are recommending still an additional grade 3 teacher with that 162 students in grade 2 moving up to grade 3. As Monique has pointed out, we do need to keep our buildings clean. We're recommending a 0.5 custodian, but new on the plate for this presentation, we are recommending a reduction of a 1.0 special education teacher at Park Ave Elementary. We did a deeper dive into caseloads, and we actually prioritized the needs, and that's our priority list right there for Park Ave. For Webster Middle School, we have shifted from asking for a 0.4 dean of students at the middle school to asking for a full-time dean of students. That would actually be a budget neutral request, and you will see why on the next page. We are asking, as we did at the last budget meeting, for an additional 1.0 adjustment counselor, and we would be doing that by shifting the contracted service, the 0.6 contracted service funds over to the, shifting that person out of contracted services into our LEA budget and replacing the grant that paid for the contracted service with paraprofessionals. So we'd be doing a little bit of a swap. The end result would be an increase of a 0.4 in our budget. We are also asking for a 0.5 custodian at the middle school. And new to the table, we would be recommending a reduction of a 1.0 paraprofessional. Currently, that position has been vacant, and we are in January, and again, we prioritize needs. At Bartlett High School, we are not asking for a dean of students. We are asking, or we are starting actually this week, we are going to ask our SRO to be stationed at the high school. And he is going to be doing that starting tomorrow. He would, of course, be going to the middle school and the elementary school for educational programming and touching base every once in a while to make sure relationships are built, would be called for emergencies. But we made that decision as a group, as a team. Currently, right now, we are having some significant issues with kids vaping at the high school, occasionally kids using and bringing marijuana to school, and the presence of a police officer is needed. And so we had that discussion. For the district, we are requesting an additional 0.5 to go with the 0.5 open position in the superintendent's office. We have not been able to fill that position because it is a 0.5. And we certainly need some assistance with HR and confidential information. This would not be a union position. This would be a central office position dealing with confidential information. And I'm very pleased to say that out of our brainstorming, we have prioritized the need to hire a 0.8 ELL director for the district. Our numbers of second language learner students is increasing all the time, and so are the regulations. With the new Look Act, we are required, I have a list, I won't read it, to be in compliance with a lot of new things. And quite frankly, Kathy Barris is wonderful, but she cannot do everything. So we are asking for a 0.8 ELL director, which would complement our already wonderful team with 2 curriculum directors. An ELL director would actually make sure that we are paying attention to SEI strategies in the classroom. We're providing supports for our teachers. It made me very happy that we actually came to that out of our last budget meeting. So all of these, you're saying, how can you do all this and only go down to a 4.2? Well, we still want a family liaison, a 0.3 family liaison, possibly even more, but we are looking to adjust the funding sources. We have before and after school funds, and a family liaison and before and after school funds kind of mesh together nicely. What we're looking for a family liaison is someone that will do some outreach to families, the families that aren't coming to school, the families that don't have that connection, and someone who speaks Spanish. We need to bridge that. We are also looking to, in our first draft, we had told you that we were not going to use any school choice money. We have traditionally been taking $100,000 out to cover ABAs. In this draft, we are suggesting that we take $50,000 out of school choice funds to cover some of the ABAs.
It's an additional 50. We applied 100,000 towards technology, so this is using an additional 50.
Okay. So we've also eliminated these positions, the one life skills positions at Bartlett High School. The contracted service is being shifted, one special education teacher at Park Ave, and the 0.2 school psychologists. And I can't read that.
This is just the breakdown from what you see in positions that were asked. So you'll see, for instance, the addition of the 0.4 dean at the middle school was struck out because we are reallocating the resource from the high school over to the middle school, so we're not asking. So anything that is struck out was in the first version is not being asked for in the second version. So really, it comes to a net of $116,000 in dollars for the positions if you look at reductions and adds.
This is the same list that you saw at the first meeting. We have not touched any of these things. We're still going to be increasing our curriculum renewal line to align with our curriculum plan, and roll out our math and iReady assessments and an ELL program and science and continued professional support for Looney Math, and funds to support our 1-year and 2-year teachers, which is very important. We want our teachers to come to Webster, and we want them to stay, and we want them to be very well supported. This is new. we're asking for 2 additional counselors, and we are not filling the contracted service position over at the high school. And I wanted to point out what the actual caseloads would be, which are still very good because the American School Association recommends a 1 to 250 ratio. So I think these are good numbers for our counselors. Okay. And these are our class sizes, just in case you wanted to see them again. Yep, high school. Our enrollment. So that's our budget, 4.2. I'm very pleased that we're digging deeper as a team. Our first presentation we knew was our first draft, but the last meeting and this team came up with some great ideas. We looked at our overall needs in the district, and as a team, we prioritized and we came up with this plan.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
Mr. Chair.
Mrs. Blythe?
So I noticed earlier when I was reviewing the budget that the dean was removed from Bartlett, and I understand now that we would have an SRO. I guess I completely understand that, but my concern is what happens if that resource goes away? You know, I don't know how resourcing works for his role, and also, you know, he does a very good job, but how, trying to articulate this, how would his training and background kind of equate to a dean? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
It's a different role. A school resource officer is not a district administrator, but we do pay half of the salary. So we have an agreement with the police station, and we pay half the salary. They can build relationships with students. They're there to assist with crises that are going on. With 450 students and the number of ratios, I wanted to give you a piece of paper that showed what surrounding towns and what the numbers were for staff. We prioritized other positions before the dean. And I know that's a shift for the high school. And I think it's a shift in the way we do things. And we had this conversation. Discipline is not the responsibility of just 2 people or 3 people. It's the responsibility of everyone. And so, for example, we're going to talk a little bit about the discipline report that you saw at the last meeting shortly. And there were some, not errors, but over calculations. What we're trying to do as an admin team is to establish a climate where not everything comes down to the office. So there's a tier 1 and a tier 2 of what teachers should be dealing with. And I think Mrs. Promley had a great exercise with her staff. She took a look at all the discipline that came down, and they went through it, and they sort of said, what's a major incident and what stays in the classroom? And I think that exercise needs to be done at both the middle school and at the high school. And I'm not saying that teachers are sending kids out for no reason. We absolutely, like all schools, have some issues with behaviors and students that need to see an administrator. But for 450 kids, we're hoping with the school resource officer stationed there that end the discussion about what comes to the office, that we begin to change the patterns of what's going on. I'm going to pass this out to you guys. This was done by some superintendents in my group, and it kind of gives you a ratio of numbers of what schools have for students and how many counselors and how many administrators. just a quick shot. I think we're in the realm of being able to handle it. And then the good news is we're on the same campus. So if there's 3 administrators over at the middle school and there's a situation going on, it's a phone call and a quick walk over. So that idea of collaborating and teaming is still there.
So just one more thing. I know that Bartlett has a lower number of students now. What concerns me is that I want to make sure that the students, because some of them are higher needs than others, I want to make sure that those programs are kept in place and that those students are getting what they need with the reduction of a dean. So that's really, I guess, what I was trying to narrow down to.
It sounds like, if I may, what you're saying is some of the issues that they're facing at Bartlett may not be SRO material, but more something that we need to handle as a team.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to
That's real
figure out,
interesting.
yeah.
And that's something in the discussions we hope to support with the adjustment counselor, the new adjustment counselor that we were having. So we have, if you notice, our counts for counselors at the high school, 4 counselors, 2 of them are adjustment, 2 would be guidance. So those counselors would intervene and work with higher needs.
And across the district, I think what a counselor does, whether you're a school counselor or a school adjustment counselor, your primary role is to service children. And so they need to be involved with discipline as well. Discipline's a teachable moment for any student. And they need to process what happened and how that's not going to happen again. And some students need repeated supports. And that's not necessarily an assistant principal or an SRO or a principal. That's a guidance counselor. If students are having behavioral issues and repeated issues, we need to make sure that they have the supports. And I'm pleased to say that we also are going to have the additional supports of UInc coming in. We're setting that up where kids will be able to get a more of a therapeutic counseling at school with parent permission. So we have that going on as well.
Ms. Perangeli, you just mentioned that there are going to be 4 counselors. Just want to make sure I'm looking at the right.
In the comments, Mr. Herton pointed out before the meeting, there was an error. That should be 4 counselors.
Okay.
Should say 2 guidance, 2 adjustment.
Okay, on line 328.
Yes,
But the dollar amount is correct.
yes.
Yeah. Good to know that you and I think alike.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The new ELL director, point 8, where is that reflected on the line by line? Is it line 614 under curriculum office?
Yes. Yes.
And, you know, I certainly understand the needs of ELL and special education. I guess my only concern, and it's just food for thought at this point, is, you know, I always worry about becoming too administrative heavy, where those funds could be maybe used elsewhere.
So we had that same conversation, Kathy, and we were thinking about titling it a coach. Really, we need someone to be able to coach and work with our teachers. So the word director doesn't necessarily have to be there. That's the purpose, is to help what's going on in the classroom and to oversee the programming. Kathy, do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Good evening. How are you? Yeah, and I think the analysis, when you look at our data and the trajectory of our ELL population, it's fairly significant. We actually had kind of tossed around, you know, will we actually need another teacher next year? given our data. Just in 1 year's time, we went from an October 1 count of 87 students to, I think it was 167 students, and we're currently servicing almost 180 students in ELL. And the regulatory requirements have become very, very, I guess, more intensive over the past couple of years, as Mrs. Gogan talked about the Look Act and the implications of that. So kind of overseeing that is pretty significant. Providing the support that the ELL teachers need for making sure we're meeting all of those, the regulations in terms of service delivery, in terms of scheduling, in terms of access testing, in terms of screening students who are coming in. This year, we screened over 50 students in kindergarten. So it's becoming a much bigger program than we anticipated, considering our current numbers. Given that, plus the what we want to do in terms of oversight and coaching in the regular education classrooms, where a lot of the language acquisition really is built, in terms of within the general education classrooms with SEI endorsed teachers. I think it would be a real benefit to us to have that embedded in the role of that particular position. So it's, I think the role will be fairly broad, and definitely will help us to work on developing our program model. We've had consultants coming in working with us over the past, I want to say, probably a year or more, starting to really define and better develop what our program structures are. And that's been helpful, but it really isn't quite the same as having someone who really can kind of be all-encompassing for the entire program.
It's the follow-up. It's the follow-up and support. And the Department of Education is coming out with new benchmark assessment requirements for ELL students, and so that will be another additional thing that we have to manage and monitor. And I just want to go back to the Dean of Students at the high school. We last year took the Dean of Students at the high school and we separated the Dean of Students and we made a 60-40 split. The numbers at the middle school are 600 students. The needs at the middle school are a little higher right now than in terms of all hands on deck. The high school needs are a little different. There's not as many fights. There's not as many. There's not a high number of having 14 kids in your office at one time. If we go to this model and we see that the SRO and things aren't going, we can always do the same thing. We can always take that dean and have some time over at the high school. But the topic of behaviors and the way kids are acting and the number of suspensions all go back to social emotional supports. And we have to take a deeper look at what we're doing for programming. So it's not a body issue. Put another body in the school and everything's going to be okay. The idea is we want our numbers to decrease. We want the behaviors to change. We want kids to be more successful. We want them to be in the classrooms learning and taking part of what they're doing. So that's the work and the conversation that we are beginning to have here. By virtue of putting additional counselors in our schools and actually tasking our counselors to be a little bit more involved with some of the discipline issues and the follow-through and building those relationships with kids, and putting in some programming, responsive classroom at the elementary school, second step at the middle school. I think we're going to see changes just like we saw and are seeing with a reading program. Our idea is early intervention and have the kids learn those skills before they move to the middle school and eventually decrease those types of behaviors. So it's not a one-person fix-a-job type of deal, and I just wanted to say that.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just had one question. How do you determine sub-budgets?
Highly underfunded. That was actually going to be one of my comments.
We go by past practice, looking at prior years and building from there. So we're comparing to what the year was before. It's something we've tried to work on, attendance.
How's
over
that
the years.
going?
Ha, 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 ha. Ha, ha.
Staff attendance?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll be blunt. They're trying to be kind. It's, from what I've been told, it's awful.
A lot of the things that we're talking about have to do with culture. We do have some issues with attendance, students and staff alike. We want people to come to work. We want people to want to come to work. That's why we're investing in a mentor program. That's why we're investing in professional development. You know, when you're sick, we don't want you to come to work, but a day out of the classroom for a teacher is a day of non-learning for kids, coupled with the kids that are out. So it's a bad combination. We need parents' support. We need parents to understand the importance of getting kids here on time. We need, right now, our guidance counselors at all the schools from our last budget meeting are being tasked with reporting back to their principals on what new, and I say new on purpose, what new things they are going to come up with creatively to reach the families and the students that are not coming to school regularly. Because I say this all the time, you do the same thing, you get the same results. We have to start thinking out of the box. We've had great discussions about what are we going to do with the students that get in trouble all the time and they go back into the classroom and then they get in trouble. Well, we need a program. We need to figure out, we need to reallocate our funds and do something different because what we're doing is not working. And that's not the student's fault. That responsibility is on us. So we have to be creative. And I think our last budget meeting, we broke through some ice, and we're getting there and having those conversations. We have incentives for people. I recognized people for attendance awards at the opening of District Day. I know our principals recognize staff that are here every day. We want positive incentives. We put in the contract this year that if you don't use your 2 personal days, you get 1 rolled over as a sick day. We're trying to think out of the box to get people to be here.
The only way I know how to budget is to look at previous years and take a look at what the average has been and go from there.
What is the level service number?
It was 550-something thousand.
So basically, you're roughly looking at a 330,000 additional total.
Sounds about right, yep.
I do believe we historically have underfunded the sub line item. I'm concerned with the out-of-district funding, and I know this is an incredibly complicated, not just our problem, but we were very lucky this past fiscal year, if my memory serves me correctly,
Extremely lucky.
in getting some significant utility savings, which we've reduced in this budget.
Correct.
So that wiggle room is not there. And I get it. You guys are trying to squeeze every penny you can to add what we need. I'm not criticizing that. I'm just kind of expressing some of my concerns. Because if the estimates, I think it was 6 or 7 students ideally coming back net for next year for out of district. If that doesn't occur, or if we're not accounting for what the norm has been of new kids coming in, which I know we can't control, now we have a bigger problem. I'm just worried about that savings potential or savior sometimes potential there. If the estimate on school choice comes in at 153, I have no problem using the 50,000. I'm just curious, why did you put it in the ABA line item? Was it just,
That's been historical. That's usually, it's offset the ABA expenditure.
we've used school choice funds for that?
Yes.
Really?
And last year, we were fortunate, we did not have to use our school choice because of the savings that we had in the budget.
Oh, okay, so
But in
that's why
prior years, we have.
we have.
We have.
And even, again, if the 153,000 income estimate for, because we don't even know FY 18's exact number, correct?
That is accurate.
So that 153,860 is accurate?
Yes.
Okay, so if those numbers are higher than the norm, than what was previous, we're in pretty good shape because we would still have a $500,000 roughly budget.
Right, and that was the thought process, that we didn't touch it last year. So we would still feel comfortable going in, having that revenue.
And then just my final thought, and once again, I will not be the most popular person in the room. I understand why. I appreciate what we offer our students. You probably know where I'm going at this point. You increased the extracurricular budget by $8,000 for transportation, which was great. We also increased the athletic budget by $8,000. I had a student ask me last week, I think, and this is a student who plays 3 varsity sports. Why, if an athletic team makes the playoffs, which is a wonderful thing, students don't have to pay a penny. They can go first round, second round, all the way up to states, and we pay for everything. But if a student wins DECA and they go on to the state competition, which I think is in Boston. Now, granted, I get it, it's an overnight, it's a 2 or 3 day event, I believe. That student has to come up with $250 or $300 to attend kind of the state finals. And the student asked me, is that fair? I said, well, it's not fair, but it's not an exactly apples to apples comparison. But it got me thinking, again, you know, for some children, whether it's to go to the state DECA competition or whether it's to do the show choir or whether it's to do some of these other extracurricular activities, it's a challenge. So.
Just to let you know, we have helped in the past with DECA and
Absolutely.
and
We just funded their last competition that it cost to go out. I believe it was, I want to say, $800 for the entire that we funded. And I have been working side by side with Ms. Hainig with any of her concerns when she feels that the program, you know, DECA kids can't afford,
Right.
or there's a large group going, or she needs any kind of assistance. We have been working hand in hand, which we do with other programs. Whenever show choirs come to me with any kind of, and most of the requests that we do get is transportation. Even when we were looking at the budgets that were submitted to us and requests that were made, most of the requests, the costs were transportation. There wasn't much request for anything else. We have been working with individuals when.
But last year, there was Mr. Knowlton had, I believe, asked all the advisors, kind of in an ideal scenario, if could everything be paid for, it was roughly a $50,000 amount of additional money, correct?
yes.
And you're saying now that's not,
We did not get any major requests coming in from the high school. We had asked for budgets. I have a few budgets here. And we've been looking, and there wasn't really anything outrageous. A lot of it we're supporting already, and most of it is transportation. 99% of it is transportation, as we saw in the out-of-districts budgets. But
well, like I said, it was a student who asked me the question, and fortunately, this student's parent or family does have the ability, but it was something I just wanted to share.
And certainly, if students do not have the ability, we want to make sure that they can have these opportunities. And I think that we do that behind the scenes, that we just don't publicize.
Right.
And I would like you to know that all of the extracurricular advisors did hand in budgets. And I was quite surprised they weren't like they were last year. So.
Interesting. Any other questions or comments from the committee?
Did I take it all?
no, almost.
Oh. Hearing none, that's round 2. We shall continue the discussion moving forward, but I do we just want to thank the team because I know, again, it's not an easy process.
It isn't with me.
And
I lock them in this room and they can't leave.
don't feed them and turn the heat up really high.
We feed them. We feed them and we laugh. Before I allow they can't go yet because we have to talk about discipline. Can I just capture your recommendations? Because we will be coming back with a third budget. So it sounds like you really want us to look at the sublines, which I agree with you, and you want us to look at the added district costs and take a quick peek at extracurricular activities again. Any other recommendations from the school committee?
Yes.
2 questions. The subline, I know you're going to look at it. Are we competitive with our rate?
Oh, yes, we increased it this year.
Is it 85?
Yep.
So I think it was last year, we got to sort of the 11th hour in the budget, and we talked a lot about some of the extracurricular activities that are not athletics, like show choir and some of those other things. Is that on our radar? Is that something that we're writing in and we have?
We have the budgets.
I have budgets. We didn't receive budgets for 100%, but what I have, I'm comfortable with. And I have talked verbally with the other departments that didn't get us budgets. And, the support that, they're not looking for 100% funding. They're really looking, what most of them are telling me is they're looking for support with transportation because that's the most expensive thing out there. Some of them have built things into their regular budget also. I know like music has, the band has about 4,000 built into their budget for music, for their programs that they plan on using. So we've been supporting quite a bit of it. Even this year to date, we've been supporting it.
So moving into the next year, we'll have.
I'm
set
comfortable with
aside,
the level.
sort of
Yep.
Well, the proposed budget is to increase the transportation in that category by $8,000.
In addition to what we have in the transportation line, but we were just showing that's in addition.
Right, no, I understand.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what is proposed, an additional $8,000 for transportation for all the extracurricular activities.
But there are other things that are involved in extracurricular.
That's what I've been told, but perhaps,
It's not coming back to us that way.
Yeah.
Oh, we did cover like some ADECA fees. We did cover that this past. So that was something we did assist with.
The show choir was here, right, at a meeting?
Correct.
Right before we finished the budget. And it was too late for us to be able to do anything at that point. So I wonder if now is the time for us to figure that out.
We've been asking. I will tell you, we've been asking. I
Did
can
you-
only work with what I have.
have you been asking the staff, or have you been just specifically show choir, or have you been asking the music boosters?
Not the music boosters. I
Well,
wouldn't
that's
go to
where the
music-
majority, but that's
I
where the
wouldn't go to
majority.
music I'm asking the lead, the lead directors of the
Mm-hmm.
program, who should know what the expenses are. They forward all the invoices to the music boosters. So they would be the point, not the music boosters. They see everything, they set everything up, and they see the invoicing. So they should know what it costs to run their program. So that's what I'm requesting information from. Now, I can't, like I said, in our discussions and what I look at, I can only work with what I have and what I see and what I'm given and what I'm told,
But it's pretty dramatic, and I don't know why, to go from a wish list of $50,000. I think that was the number last year that was asked. All the advisors, if you could pay every penny of everything you want to do, it totaled 50,000, which none of us knew we could fund in total, to now saying, going down to roughly nothing. Going down to 8,000.
Well, the 15,000 included transportation, so if you look at it, the 50, we're spending 32. If you look at what we've pretty much budgeted on the town side in transportation and the additional funds, including to all the stipends, which is an additional 40-something, I believe, on top of it. So it's not, where the 18 delta comes in, I don't know. I don't know which group, I don't know which program. I mean, we've never been asked for funding for costumes and things like that. I still haven't seen that. If I'm not getting requests, I can't just
Right.
make up a number, and I don't feel when we're budgeting and we're looking at every dime, we're looking at sublines, we're looking at electricity lines, we're looking at, places that we can save and cut. I don't feel I'm doing my due diligence just to put in numbers that I don't have support for.
We have asked,
Yes.
and we have some, but it's different than last year.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is discipline data update.
Okay.
If budget is not the most popular subject, discipline is the second most.
It is. It's only Tuesday, and everybody's so tired. I know, I feel the same way. We had a very in-depth conversation about programming, budgeting, priorities, and the sheet that we gave you. And, we put together this sheet, and the way people tally things are a little different at each school, the way the systems are. And I'm going to just point out, there's 2 numbers on the sheet in front of you for the Webster Middle School. So we had each of the schools go back and take a very close look with their teams about what are their discipline issues. I mean, I think, Robin, you had come to the meeting with a pile of referrals like this thick, but probably this many were major incidents that warranted the dean or the assistant principal and the principal. And that is why you had a conversation with the rest of your staff about not giving up their authority as classroom teachers to manage behaviors in their classrooms. And I have tasked the middle school and the high school principal to do the same thing, to take a look at really what are the discipline issues. Because these numbers may be alarming, especially at the middle school, and they did go back and they changed the numbers. We want to know what's really happening. What are the issues? So we wanted to bring that forward. And I don't know if anyone on the team wants to speak about that.
I feel I need to respond to the changes in the middle school. When we were given the task of identifying behaviors in terms of when administration is intervening in a student issue, I took into consideration meeting with guidance counselors, meeting with the school resource officer, those meetings that happen when you're dealing with a child. It's not just one facet. There's many facets to trying to solve a problem long term. So it's conversations you have with guidance, conversations you have with SRO, parents' involvement. So when I was tallying it up, one incident could encompass 3 conversations that I'm directly involved in. So that's where my numbers. So what I did was I went back and I looked at the data that we had and said, okay, when was I called? Mr. K was called to a classroom, and when was a referral sent down and a child sent to the office from a classroom? So those are the 2 criteria, which models at Park Avenue and the high school, I believe, after having a conversation later on. So you'll see the drastic change in my numbers. I also took the directive from Superintendent Gogan and met with my leadership team after school, and we sat down and together we did mild, moderate, and severe behaviors, and we identified the behaviors, we identified the teacher responsibilities, and then we also identified the administration responsibilities, administration support staff. What I can say to you is we were right on. There was no discussion of well, I believe this should be a moderate behavior and this should be a minor behavior. We were right on in terms of where the behaviors landed and where the response would be. And what we're doing with that information as a leadership team involving my ILT team is we are going to have this very frank conversation with the faculty on February 6th. And we're now going to work it as a faculty. So I have a flow chart that we went through that if it was a minor or moderate behavior, you would follow this path, which would be to redirect, reteach, contact with the families, possibly a warning or a verbal warning or detention. And the other path, which is a more severe, would warrant removal from the classroom, would warrant administration involvement. And we also came up with clear definitions and explanations of them. If it's something that is a threat of student safety, faculty safety, complete insubordination, disruption to the learning environment, that's more of a severe, and that would involve administration immediately. Okay, so we did go through that together, and it felt as though we were right on the same page in terms of what we were doing all year and since last year. But now we're going to introduce that to our faculty, because we had a very frank conversation that how discipline is handled in one room has to mirror how it's handled in another room. A child should be going to the same class and two different classes and have the same expectations and expect the same response. That's something that we had a discussion with.
So we felt bad that the numbers needed to be explained a little bit more. So that's why we're bringing that forward. And in light of the conversation about what are we going to do in terms of disciplinary positions next year, we really need to know what's going on in the schools. And the way that we collect that data and then respond to it, we have to get a better system in place across the district so that the majors are the majors and the minors are the minors, for a lack of a better word, so it doesn't look inflated. And so we're in the process of taking a little bit deeper look at our data collection. So this was an initial dipstick that we needed to clarify. Anything else, team, that you wanted to speak about with in terms of disciplinary needs?
I just want to point out on the high school numbers for October, what we were doing at that point was we were calculating students who were late in lunch detentions. So you see that spike, but we were doing a test run of doing lunch detentions as a disciplinary piece of tardies that proved not to be an effective strategy.
So when we were doing that exercise, as far as looking at behaviors, I think what was really great is it opened up conversations. You know, you get many staff in a room and how they look at behaviors, and having those conversations of what a 1 or a 2 is compared to a 3, 4, or 5. So being able to level and give very clear descriptors and expectations, I think really made a big difference. What it also did is it brought to the floor, one of the teachers had mentioned that, you know, those 4 and 5 behaviors that can sometimes really escalate and definitely need our intervention. However, you have those 2 and 3 behaviors that may not be at that level. However, if they're ongoing, they're still continuing to disrupt instruction and stop the flow of instruction. So it was really good to be able to say to them, you know what, so let's talk about that, and how do we address that so that you don't feel like that you're going to necessarily feel like you're handling that all by yourself, because we want them teaching and not handling a behavior that's over and over and over. So we were able to go back, listen to their feedback, and with the adjustment counselors, sit down and develop a form to where when that, if we're having that ongoing within a day, they can actually, after so many of them, attach it to the referral form that basically says, you know what, it may not be at the level of a 4 or 5, but I need support. So I think opening up these conversations and calibrating and getting everybody on the same page is just really important, and it's going to be a learning curve that we're going to continue to tweak and refine and finesse. But I believe that as all the schools do this, that we'll get better and better at understanding what behaviors look like and the strategies that we need to do to keep them in the classroom. That is our goal, is to keep them in the classroom, because you can't teach an empty seat. But at the same time, we want to support our teachers in every capacity possible.
Any questions or or comments from the committee? Again, just thank you for the additional information, and I know this is an ongoing discussion, analysis, and programming process, so thank you.
Just a follow-up on the budget. Numbers will be released, hopefully tomorrow. We have a conference call on Friday with the state to review follow-up. So I'm expecting at our next budget meeting to bring more of a financial side of what we can hope for revenues. And
I did, now that you say that, I had a brief conversation with Mr. Willardson. Did you guys meet with him recently?
We have not.
Okay.
I just requested a budget meeting for Friday, not Friday,
February
February 1st, and they were both available. So we'll be meeting then to discuss the budget of the.
There's a big looming issue
Yeah,
out there that
but
will
we'll know
really.
more after this week, and hopefully we'll have a better financial picture of revenue that we can talk about at the next meeting.
So you expect an initial Chapter 70 estimate soon?
Yes, yep.
Thank you.
You-
Continuing with the agenda, the next item under new business is approval of out-of-state field trip request, senior class to High Meadows, Granby, Connecticut. This is the annual senior trip taken this year on June 3rd, 2019. And again, per school committee policy, since it is an out-of-state field trip request, it does require school committee approval. Is there anything to be added? I believe no. Any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the out-of-state senior class field trip to High Meadows in Granby, Connecticut.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Laurie, would you poll the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item on the agenda is approval of various sports coaching job descriptions.
We have tasked the athletic director and the two principals to produce job descriptions for all of our positions. We do have one error with the girls' middle school basketball, 2 errors on the girls' middle school basketball coach and the boys' middle school basketball coach that need to be fixed. But as it has been, all job descriptions need to come to the school committee. I think these job descriptions will help us in the hiring process and what are expected of anyone who takes a position. And we're bringing them forward.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Dr. Cushing? Yeah.
Just in review, when I submitted these, working with the athletic director, one oversight, I think we should remove the gender from football, as females do have the opportunity to play football. And when I submitted it, I did put boys under gender, and just making sure that we're not discriminating on the basis of gender identity. I think that would probably be a smart move for us to do.
Agreed.
Sorry, I didn't notice it before.
So you guys caught the girls' middle school basketball coach, third paragraph as the soccer? And then the same boys' middle school okay. The varsity coaches in this third paragraph says as the varsity coach, and then junior varsity says as the junior varsity coach. But for the middle school, it says as the sport coach for this sport. Should that be, should it just for consistency's sake say as the middle school coach for this sport? You see what I'm saying?
I removed varsity. I did remove the varsity because a lot of the, we don't have designation between varsity and JV.
No, I understand that, but it just,
The
in the
wording-
third paragraph, it says as the basketball coach for this sport.
Okay, as a.
It does, again, this
Middle
might be
school.
semantics, but the
Yeah.
others, the high, that's all, just say as the middle school. There's no qualifications listed on any of them.
So in doing honestly a lot of research on coach job descriptions, what myself, the athletic director, and Mr. Zajac did was we tried to find actually job descriptions out there.
Right.
And the vast majority of collegiate and other high school job descriptions for athletics are actually very general. And what we tried to do was we actually tried to go and talk about specific skills in that third paragraph. And I would be open to any other suggestions that people have to make them more specific. But there was in the research that I did, really scanning college and other high schools. Number one, there are a lot of high schools that do not have specific job descriptions, which I'm surprised at. But at the collegiate level, they're very generic and are basically just covering the skills of being a coach and a mentor rather than anything sports specific.
Okay.
But what we did try to do was try to identify those things in definitions of what soccer is, what volleyball is, as best as possible. But I think we're all more than open to make them as comprehensive as possible.
And I know this was a big task. There's a lot of descriptions here, and I don't want to overcomplicate it, but typically in a job description, it does include qualifications. And I understand it's just maybe a paragraph form. The other interesting thing was now that you mention it, that third paragraph where it talks about what they should be doing was much more detailed for Bartlett and less detailed for the middle school. I don't know if that was intentional or if that was just.
The wording is, it's not as intense at the middle school level. You're still at the level of developing a skill. We have many students who are just, we have many players who are playing, girls who are playing basketball right now who've never played before. So it's more of still like it's still a rec, and almost like a rec instructional league, whereas it's still at the high school, but it's more competitive. Our teams do not have a championship, so middle school does not go on for a championship. Whereas at the high school level, I believe I had to remove that from the definition, from the job description, because our students will compete, but there's not a final champion, league champion.
And then just the last comment I had was, if you go where it's description of basic functions, the last sentence of that first paragraph states, as such, coaches are responsible for the following in consultation with the athletic director and any sub-varsity coaches. What do you mean by a sub-varsity coach? Because if it's a varsity job description, to me, this would say that the varsity coach would be under the partial direction of a sub-varsity coach.
So the way it should read is, it should be basically that you're responsible for those sub-varsity coaches. So if we're talking, let's take, for example, I think football is the easiest example, but I think it can be used in any coaching example. Setting the philosophy, the playbook, those types of things for those sub-varsity coaches for middle school, so that when the students come in middle school, they're getting a philosophy of, what offense are we running here? Are we running the wing tee? Are we running the power I? Are we running the pro offense? And so basically that those sub-varsity coaches are following the philosophy and direction of the varsity coaches, so that, say, as the middle school players come to the high school, they're not relearning an entirely new system. Be whatever the sport may be. Football is just the easiest, given my long history with it. So basically that those varsity coaches are setting the overall philosophy. They're not working as dictators, but they're working in consultation with those coaches to make sure that the absolute best program is being put forward at the middle and JV level, or freshman if there is a coach at that or a team at that, to make sure that there's consistency in drills, consistency in expectations. I think if you're a basketball person and you're running a press offense, and honestly, that's all I know besides that it's an inflated basketball. But those types of things, to really try to make sure that those varsity coaches are the people who are setting the tone for the program.
But that language is also in the description for the junior varsity coaches.
Well, they should be working also with the freshman coaches and those types of things. But once again, open to changing it and open to.
It just was confused. I understand now that you explain it, what your intent was. It's just, it was, the way I read it the first time was, for instance, the varsity coach will be responsible for these items in consultation with the athletic director, which makes sense, because he or she oversees the athletic program with assistance of the building principal and a sub-varsity coach. I understand what you're saying, but it doesn't make sense, to me at least, the way it was presented for the varsity coaches specifically.
We can take a look at all of these. I have been tracking down some of these recommendations. So if I'd like to recommend that we work a little bit on this and bring it back to you.
Okay.
All of them?
And again, I understand this was a huge undertaking and everybody's very busy. Those were just some of my thoughts. I don't know if any of the members had any other.
No, these are new.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Maybe we could throw in something around minimum qualifications. I know Kelly's more of the HR person, but I just feel like some type of minimum qualifications should be spelled out. So that it can be clear, you know, prior coaching experience or whatever it may be.
Knowledge of the sport and
Knowledge of the
rules
sport,
and,
right,
right, basic
Yeah.
things would be important.
Yeah, right.
There are some templates out there for that. And even perhaps, sorry to jump in.
No, please.
Something around monitoring the academic performance of the students that are on the team to make sure that they're meeting the academic standards in order to remain engaged in the sport.
Point.
Yes, good call out.
And actually, I know in the high school descriptions, it talks about making sure all the insurance paperwork and the waivers are signed. Is that, because it wasn't listed in the middle school, I don't believe.
Each coach is responsible for collection of all paperwork. They do work closely with the school nurse to ensure that the physicals are done, so that's something that should be within there.
If I remember correctly, and again, as you know, it wasn't easy, and I was getting confused myself trying to take a look at 85 pages worth of.
Okay.
Now, of course, I put it away. I'm trying to find.
So the only dilemma we have with pushing this to another meeting is that we have not been posting positions until these were approved. So what I'd like to recommend is that we post the positions pending the approval of the job positions so that we can get those positions out.
Mr. Chair? I do have some concerns with the specifications of requirements for coaches because I wouldn't want to exclude somebody that might really want to try their hand at coaching a sport, you know, particularly somebody who is currently teaching in the district. So if there is language in there about required qualifications, then I would just want to review that to make sure that it's inclusive and not exclusive.
Agreed.
Did you have something else, Ms. Dickey?
Just a thought that we may even post with a draft description and just
Okay.
indicate that it's a draft and we're still in the process of revising it.
Okay.
Won't hold you up any further.
Good.
Do you need I'm sorry, Mr. Zajac.
No, just a clarification. When you look at minimum requirements, the certification is minimum. That gets them in the door, even if they do get an interview. When we interview, that's when we get down to details of the understanding of the rules, of their philosophy and pedagogy of the team, what kind of offense they run, kind of defense they run, what kind of team are they going to, are they going to be more of a defensive team or are they going to be more of an offensive, a basketball team where it's just going to be running the whole time. So considering a person who's never played basketball, I understand what they're trying to do. So a lot of the qualifications and expectations we have is during the interview process. And that's why a number of people will be involved, myself included, to see if that person is right for our school setting and our students and do they possess the skill set. Because each district has different skill sets in their approach to working with students. So that's part of the interview process tells you a lot more. The certification just gets them to be even considered for the position.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
My counterpoint to that would simply be that the job description is a very objective view of what you want in a position, and observations during an interview can tend to be more subjective. So not that you would want to take either one, but having an objective list of qualifications and responsibilities and measuring each candidate against a predetermined list enables a higher level of objectivity than simply evaluating people based on their personality and how they might fit in the culture.
It makes it sound like that. We do rank them on questions. So we have a set of questions, and it could be management, it could be instructional practices, it could be parent communication, it could be expectations. And then each interviewee, the first people in the candidacy will interview and they'll rate them on where they stand in that category. When you're talking to a candidate and you ask them like, what would a practice look like? We're talking about dealing with the unfortunate situation of a child not getting much playing time. How do you handle that? You learn very quickly on how that person is going to handle stressful situations and how they're going to adapt quickly on the fly. So the questions arise at detail and to the best of our ability, other than watching them actually coach a game, how they would interact with our student groups. So but I do agree that set questions and ranking them is very valuable to do.
Mrs. Gogan, you don't need a formal vote on what you plan to do, correct?
No, I don't
Okay.
think I do. But we
And-
will bring them back. I don't want to hold up the sports for the children. So if we could post, and we've been holding off to
All the
this
spring
meeting.
positions?
Yes,
yeah.
spring.
Any other questions or comments from the members? Again, thank you. I know that there's a lot of work that went into that. Next item on the agenda is first reading of updates to field trip request form file, and I love these file letters, IJOA-E.
So, as you know, we're really working towards consistency in this district and having procedures and policies and be followed. So we had a couple different field trip request forms. The old one, some people used.
That's the old one.
That's the old one. And we've kind of combined the two, the old one and a new one, which has new information on it, like notifying the nurse and how many chaperones. And so we would like the school committee to do a first read on we haven't changed the policy, just the form, because we think it gives us more information about where the students are going, who's going with them, who they've contacted, and it's a cleaner, much more appealing look as well.
We need 3 reads on a form.
You can.
don't recall, honestly,
You can waive that as a committee.
Typically, it's the policy that we
policy,
do
yep.
3 reads.
Yep.
Do you recall?
Yeah.
I'm sorry? Right. I'm wondering, though, where it's on the agenda, if we might have to.
It is just the form. We have not touched the actual
But
policy.
it doesn't say, we may just have to put it on the next agenda because
can
it
do
doesn't
that.
say approval.
We can do that.
Unless the members object. We can go, typically the protocol, or actually it's our school committee policy, is to go through 3 readings of a policy change. I don't think off the top of my head you need 3 for a form, but where the agenda doesn't say approve, I'd probably, to be extra cautious, you don't need this in the next 2 weeks.
As I said, we have people using mixed forms, and we can continue to do that until this is,
I'm just concerned that somebody comes back and says you didn't put approval on the agenda.
no problem.
Are there any
And take a look at it, and
Yeah.
if there's anything that you think that's not there, that would be helpful to us, please
Any
let us know.
questions or comments regarding the updated field trip request form? Hearing none. Next item on the agenda is review transfer signing of bills, payrolls, and vouchers. We do have a middle school request, so I'll entertain a motion to transfer $4,098.55 from the middle school student activity savings account to the middle school student activity checking account.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Laurie, would you poll the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Mr. Chair,
Mr. Shenavert.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Hearing no discussion. Laurie, would you pull the committee, please?
Yes.
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 Yes, meeting adjourned. Thank you.